Hello and welcome to another live Q&A. We're live on LinkedIn, we're live on YouTube, and we are live on Facebook. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks for being a fab listener. This will be edited once after it's gone live and turned into a podcast. So if you're listening right now, thanks for being here. We've got Melanie Marten here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. You're joining us from Athens. You're currently in Greece. You're from Berlin in Germany.
Exactly.
You're the owner of the Coup, which is a PR agency, and founder of PR on the Go, which is you set it up for DIY to be able to do it yourself PR. Was that right?
Exactly. It's for every entrepreneur who is interested in PR and startups who want to do the first steps of PR by themselves.
Excellent. So, as I said, thanks for joining us today. If you've got questions for Melanie, please do ask them. We're going to be talking about PR, how to do PR, how to approach a journalist, how to get seen, the best types of stories to use for PR, how it fits with search engine optimization, and lots of practical tips for entrepreneurs, for startups, and for large enterprises. Melanie, I've got to start with, how did you get into this? What was the thing that got you into PR?
So I got into PR quite early. So I started out with the PR agency in 2010. And it actually started when I was part of a band. So I was more interested in promoting our gigs and then promoting other bands than actually be on stage myself. So that's how I found out, okay, I should pursue the PR business.
Were you singing or playing music?
It was electro punk band, so we were more like entertaining. I wouldn't say I have a great voice talent either.
But it was your voice that was being used.
Yes, it was, and my dancing skills at the time.
I now want to see this. I'm now going to have to search YouTube for some old clips and.
Yeah, fun fact, so the band still exists.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Ah.
about around 14 years later, still exists
So
without me.
So you've got a whole cross section of clients, but I mean, your typical client, you're working with global enterprises, typically with more than 1,000 staff, lots of different locations. How did that happen? I mean, when you're working with those, you're typically working with the CEO as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's totally right. So it's a great question because it actually really grew organically over the years. So when I started out in PR, I was basically I'm a big fan of everything creative happening in the city of Berlin at that time. Was a very creative vibe. That's what I'm now looking out in the city of Athens in Greece as well, where we're just about to open up our second office. And it was more like being being excited about everything creative entrepreneurship, designers, innovators at the time that I was recommended, okay, for PR services, and grew like from small creative projects that we brought into international media, or working with artists from the Berlin Arts University and brought those projects into the press, that it grew from there. So the startup scene in Berlin evolved a lot at the time. So we also became part of this and evolved, our knowledge and technology. The team grew and the clients just became bigger and bigger, up until a point in 2015 where we couldn't work so much more with, the creative industries, where it's naturally solopreneurs or small teams, such as fashion designers, actors, or product inventors. So then we came up with this platform, PR on the Go, where we gather PR experts globally. There are in today, and we provide PR tips on how to start PR yourself. So whether it could be the case that you don't have the budget, or you don't even really know, you don't have a feeling, what is PR? Do I need it? Would it benefit me? What should I, put into it? So it's a way that those PR experts introduce themselves and their expertise. by providing really actionable tips for entrepreneurs.
And you're going to be preaching to the converted here, because I totally get PR and the value of PR. I remember, was it Bill Gates that said if you've got $1 left, then it should be spent on PR? Melanie, for people that are watching and listening, why should founders, why should business owners get started with PR right away when they're launching their business, but also when they're trying to grow their business?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So we all throughout the bank, because we like I said, we collaborate with a lot of PR experts globally, and everyone is convinced that you should start with PR right away. But mostly it's what is being said is what I believe is the wrong reason. So a lot of PR experts would say, start right away. It's free coverage. It gets you the best value for money right away. Whereas I would say the reason it should be that you start with PR is to really ask yourself the right questions. Is it why am I doing this business? So you start practicing transporting emotions into your brand, to your company. What can I do that it actually provides more value to my customers and the stakeholders? Maybe the business is not as exciting, or the entrepreneur is not the greatest innovator, but provides a great work environment, or has a big charity aspect. So we're living in these times where a lot of people were shook with uncertainty, especially now after the pandemic, and more people look towards authenticity, purpose-led businesses, and transparency. So I would say to start with PR right away is also the practice of being transparent right away, really writing down and communicating what's behind the scenes. What are the products actually made of? What is the production process? Who is behind in this company? Why is it founded? All those reasons that you would start practicing communicating in PR, and you start build relationships with journalists that might not feature you when you launch, but since you give them the opportunity to follow all your steps, and then the chances also grow that they would feature you with your first big successes, at a later point. So every startup can already gain traction and first articles in PR, but you usually start with smaller outlets until you reach the bigger outlets. But I would say it's more about practicing to have a transparent communication and to become an authentic company.
So what you're saying there is that the story behind the organization is the most important part here, and people are looking to buy from organizations that they like and can see themselves wanting to buy from, and the only way to get that story, or the best way, sorry, to get that story out there, is to use PR. Makes perfect sense, and I can see how I can see how that works. And you can't beat someone else, which is what PR is. Someone else, a trade magazine, a publication, another website, talking about you and telling your story. You can't beat that. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. You talked about engaging with journalists at an early stage, to they might not feature you straight away, but over time they will. How do you go about approaching journalists, and what's what are some of the tips and tricks around approaching a journalist?
Great question again, because there's a lot of PR experts advise to build this relationship, and it's being misunderstood by entrepreneurs who think that even before their launch, even before they have something to say about launching their business, they should start a relationship with the journalist. But the journalist actually, if you don't have nothing to say, why approach the journalist? You should make your research, follow them on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, and look into the media landscape very closely, like which reporters or which journalists write about the topics that you will be able to talk about, because it's your company's business model. And this should be the first step, should be research. And then the relationship building actually starts with by not expecting coverage right away, but really by providing press information on a regular basis. So a good way to go is really coming up with a press release every single month, where you go into deep dives by introducing a company. So it doesn't need to be a product launch every month, but it's more looking back at what the journalist's actual task is, and it is to provide a journal of humankind, tell the people's stories. So within those deep dives, you might introduce your launch, but with the deep dives, you can go about like who is behind the company, what are the reasons to build the company, and what are the values, to transport this with every new press release, where you can approach the journalists. Most journalists, we did extensive research on this, where we surveyed like thousands of journalists. They really want to be approached by email. But we also connect with them on LinkedIn, and we connect with them on Twitter. On Twitter, it's more that we follow up and also support their dialogue that the journalist is starting by commenting with the social media channels of the business. And so this is the relationship building should start when you actually have something to say, but continuously go ahead and introduce yourself, but also really do the research and have an interest for the other party.
So are you better approaching journalists or media outlets that are not aligned but are talking about your sort of content, or do you start going for sort of local news and local media? Is there a preference to which? Is there a best way to go forward?
Yeah, again, great question, because also there are different opinions on the PR of the PR experts. I would always try to get national, if not even global, coverage. So nowadays, you can gain global coverage for your business when you provide a product that is also digitally available. You can then go ahead and I'm German, so we might have German clients, but then we would translate it into English and distribute it worldwide, where it can be made available digitally, because the whole world has English language media. And so you got the better chances actually of connecting. So with local, whereas the other way around, lots of startups don't look into local media. It provides a great chance of getting coverage, because when you start also celebrating where you're founded. For example, we're currently working with a Swiss startup that forgot completely on the website and in the visuals to also celebrate that it's a Swiss startup that can be proud of being a Swiss, being proud of the location, and this also attracts local journalists. And so we basically try to get coverage everywhere and do not want to exclude anything.
Yeah, when we were talking earlier, you said that you've got clients in Switzerland, in the UK, all over globally, and what was also interesting, I was talking about, there was a couple of things. First of all, we were talking about the cross section of clients, so everything from sort of big enterprises to an entrepreneur, maybe a fashion designer that's trying to break through. But what was interesting was I was asking you, if you're working with this sort of global enterprise that's got 1,000 staff, that's got a number of different locations, who is it that you're working with within that enterprise? And I was wondering if you were going to say it's a marketing department or a comms department, but interestingly, you said a lot of the time you're working with a CEO, and that really aligns with what PR is about. Tell me more about that.
Exactly. So we see PR as a growth tool, and usually the CEO, whether it's of a startup or a global enterprise, we're working with the CEO. So obviously, we would like we always aim to collaborate with the marketing department and get in line to bring the message across through all channels. But it's very important, and that is known in the global enterprises, that the PR person talks directly to the CEO, because the CEO is coming up with a strategy, the growth strategy, and he or she has the task of communicating, transparently communicating to all the stakeholders. So we're actually the first to know where the company is headed, which is very exciting. And we also promote the potential interview partner for the media, which mostly would be the CEO. And there it's very important that we work closely with the CEO, so there's no miscommunication when it goes through the different marketing departments.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Melanie, because I do get involved with PR amongst many of my clients. My strength is search engine optimization, but as an agency, we cover PR as well. And interestingly, you talked about being sometimes the first to know about growth strategies. You also get the bad, so you get the good and the bad. So with crisis comms and crisis PR, you're often the first to hear about the bad news and the bad stories within an organization. And you were talking about it being exciting. I think it's such an exciting role when you've got such a close relationship with a CEO of a large organization, and you get to know about the good and bad very quickly and instantly, and you're sort of then pressurized into dealing with that. Is that something that happens often with you?
So it is completely exciting, but I gotta say we're lucky that, because a lot of PR firms specialize on crisis communications, but then this way they attract the clients that would only come to them when the crisis hit. There was a shitstorm, or something was very badly communicated. Whereas we are for open communication, purpose-led business, and we're very lucky that we attract businesses that that we're working with on a long-term basis. So it actually didn't happen that there was a crisis. There might have been an article that wasn't not as exciting, but not really a crisis. I gotta say, when you work with a PR agent on a constant basis, so we would edit interviews for everything, when there's an interview, and we would edit anything that could lead to a miscommunication. So we're on to that first, and we didn't have crisis.
Well,
Thankfully.
that's not.
It's more about the growth strategies. So sorry to interrupt, but we learned so much from the CEOs that come with, like, let's define a new category, and what the CEOs also think is interesting, or pick their brains in their respective industries, and we can then transport it. So this is more exciting part.
Well, listen, it's not a bad thing having no crisis. I was just disappointed we didn't have any fun stories there. What about doing PR for a business that's boring? So they just maybe it's the product or the service, and it's just law, legal, that's boring. There's lots of boring industries and sectors. How do you do PR for businesses like that?
Yeah, great question, because there are indeed, so not everyone that comes to us is highly exciting and innovative, and there are different categories. So there are the mid-sized business or global enterprises that actually have a very boring parts. So for example, if they manufacture spare parts or tools that are needed for cars or for plumbing, you don't want to read about it in your lifestyle magazine. And also there's the other side, lots of entrepreneurs go start a business because they want to provide their skills and their talents on their own terms. They want to be their own boss. So they might become the local. They might open a local florist shop because they want to be their own boss, but it's not exciting, at first. Whereas we in PR really go back to telling the people side again, with the example of the companies. There are like the companies that produces maybe spare parts. There are lots of interesting business side aspects to tell for the business journalists out there that cover those topics in newspapers, also business and finance outlets. How those spare parts, the industries are affected throughout, like for example, now with the pandemic, there are like some industries that cannot go ahead and cannot grow because those spare parts are missing. Global chains, logistics, and anything connected to that. But then the biggest stories is always the people behind. So this company might be a great employer, might be a family business over generations. And we just started working with a company that is also like a family-owned, massively big company, and the CEO that basically took over and is the CEO now. And the oldest employee there was already there when he was a kid and used to babysit the now CEO, So this is a story in our fast world where it's lots of fluctuation and where people change careers all the time. You would find there a more stable work environment, maybe a really happy work environment where they have a great philosophy for those employees, but they still want to attract new talents, so they want to get some attention for this company. So we're working on those stories, by telling the stories of entrepreneurship, and it's more like a family story. People love family related stories. And when you have entrepreneurs that are usually like solopreneurs or working in small teams that start out to just be their own boss, we look at a lot of growth strategies. So how can you bring those businesses, for example, digital? Let's say with the example of the florist shop, you might feature the wedding bouquets that they're doing in wedding and fashion magazines, and try to make this florist shop a magnet for people to actually come there, make a trip there, plan a trip there to come there, or that we bring it digitally by talking about and implementing extra services such as the delivery to a wider area. So the entrepreneur needs to be open for new ideas and to open up basically either the stories that are kept within the company, or be open to new ideas on how to expand the business that can be nowadays done quite easily. So there we come up with a lot of growth strategies. For example, the florist owner would hire a student that goes on a bike to deliver flowers to companies and customers in a wider area. All those stories. We're really working on those.
Excellent. I want to talk about how PR and SEO fit together, so I'm going to come on to that shortly. But before I do that, I think it's important that we cover another element of PR, which is around personal branding. Any top tips on, or sort of, first of all, why should people consider personal branding? But secondly, top tips on personal branding, Melanie.
Yeah, so we don't specialize on PR for entertainers, let's say, where personal branding is like super important, but we look into thought leadership for startups and especially B2B businesses, also a lot where they might not come up with a new product launch all the time, or it might not be super innovative, but they're super experts the CEOs and CIOs and creators behind the scene, and we give them a voice, basically. So thought leadership is comparable to personal branding, and it's basically making the people behind, again, the people behind the company stand out with their skill set of the industry. So also, if you're looking at a PR, is not just a one-way, the communications should not go be one-way consumption, but you need to see what do the journalists need and want. So you offer your expertise for the industry, and then journalists would eventually, when they get to know you, start reaching out to you for your expertise on an article that they are writing about, which you might didn't come up with as a topic, or but you still get the feature in the story, which would help boost your business, because the business would always be mentioned as well.
And are there any tips on or advice on personal branding in particular to get out there more?
Yeah, so it's very different, different on depending on which industry you're at or the size of your business. But let's say you're a business owner of a B2B company. You would choose the channels, good channels for where you can reach your target audience, basically. Good channels for that, for B2B would be LinkedIn and Twitter. So, but also Medium is great for publishing articles. And we would then reach out to special interest magazines, business magazines, to get guest authorship. So it's about providing content by publishing content, or if you're in B2C, or if you're an entertainer, again, like, you look at where to reach my audience, and it's setting up your own channels, your personal channels on Instagram and Facebook, where's your target audience most active, or on TikTok even, if you want to reach to, if you're a younger founder and have a younger target audience. So to be very active on those channels. So the entertainer might do it more with videos and sound snippets, whereas in the more corporate world or with startups, it's more about publishing articles, also start commenting, on your own personal channels. And so your profile would be more known on the World Wide Web, and therefore boost that your company is known.
Makes perfect sense. Stephen Creer's got a question linked very much to what we're talking about right now, but also what we were talking about. He said, I would imagine that there's some resistance to clients opening up as much as you'd want them to, Melanie. Is that a recurring issue, and how do you get them to open up?
That's a great question. So it is exactly like that. So we love working with entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter the size, whether they just started out or it's the CEO of a global enterprise. But we love when they love PR, when they have an understanding of PR, when they respond to our interview requests that we got them. So we pitch them and they provide comment, they provide, that if there's a very good work relationship. So, and the entrepreneurs really says, okay, you wanted to have this story, or you want to work towards this story, and really opens up the resources, makes our life so much easier. And this is what we're looking for. That's why we try to excite entrepreneurs from the start about PR. Because there's not really, so we can work around. We always have some CEOs that wouldn't answer the interview questions, so interview opportunities would get lost, that wouldn't provide a review or a final approval on our press release drafts. And it's very frustrating, but then we work around with what we have, and we still provide coverage, but it doesn't grow as fast or as good as it could be. So we really try. We say from the start, when we have a client, we need to have weekly calls, so that we see the entrepreneur is really dedicated to it and to get our information that we also need and our approvals within those calls, even if it's just half an hour per week. So because everyone's busy, but so that we get the information. It's quite a task.
Yeah, and I guess your task is to get them as engaged with you as possible, and to really sort of trust you as well, and be there to be able to talk to. I think that's the important part, isn't it?
Exactly.
Let's move on to search engine optimization. I mean, that's I'm deeply rooted in search engine optimization, and so it's difficult for me not to talk about it. And I've always said, right from the very start, that PR is fully linked to SEO, and is such an important part of search engine optimization. I'm interested from your point of view. You brought it up when we were speaking earlier. One of the things you believe is that PR is one of the most efficient tools for SEO, which is music to my ears. I tell me more. How does PR, from your point of view, how does PR relate, and what are the things it does from an SEO point of view?
Yeah, great that you bring it up and that you also see it that way. So first, I heard it years ago from the marketing team of a global enterprise that we're working with, that that the guy was so happy about the articles we placed because those were the best tools for SEO, and he actually in the team meeting said so that this would be the best case. And now we started collaborating really closely with the SEO people in the team, because what PR used to be, we would prepare it for print media. So we would be more storytelling. We wouldn't look into keywords, but we would write more emotionally, romantically, and not go straight to the point. But whereas now the PR writing changed to fit a landscape that became just more digital. We get a broader reach, and again, with the pandemic, it's also boosted that. So whereas print media is consumed when we travel, the travel magazines, or when we take the magazines for traveling, or when we sit at a doctor. Now everything got more efficient with appointments and not sitting around too long, having time to look through a magazine. It's more about PR supporting also SEO, and it does it because we started collaborating there more by really featuring the keywords that are also in content marketing. Also there it needs to be aligned, but that our writing comes more to the point and is more efficiently for where we place it, which is nowadays mostly digital. And so we use the research of SEO to also incorporate it into the writing of our PR articles. Journalists have little time, so they take a lot of the information we give them, have a copy paste, put in their own angle, but a lot of it is copy pasted. So we have the opportunity to take those relevant SEO keywords and position them. And the journalist basically gives it a unique twist. So it will be unique content. Very often we get a do follow backlink from those media outlets. Although I have to say, the bigger the outlet, the less the backlinks are provided. So if you get a feature in New York Times, there might not be a do follow backlink, but still the brand name is on a high-ranking, high-authority website, and that is basically also SEO goal. And we want to be as efficient as possible, so we're working very closely with SEO, who also from their research gives us a lot of new ideas for where we can go for deep dives. We get a lot of, where PR used to be hard to measure, we get a lot of metrics and from SEO in return, where we will find out where to go, which topics are really well performing, which articles and angles are very interesting, and therefore it's a good collaboration, very fruitful.
Yeah, it really is. And you said that naturally you get backlinks, and at times there'll just be a brand mention, which is absolutely great from an SEO point of view, just having a brand mention. Are there any, I'm just wondering and curious, are there any tips on how to actually get a link? Is there anything that you can do differently or try or say that just takes you over the line on getting a link?
Ah, yeah, so it's really the magazine or the media outlet has specific terms for that. So some just don't provide backlinks. Mostly the bigger they are, they just don't provide backlinks. Whereas some, they're not aware, oh, they might have provided a backlink, but it's a no follow. So we follow up and ask if they could do it a do follow. And so then they haven't been aware. They give it to their technical department, and then we would get the do follow link. Also, we we expanded in PR since it's got so much digital to a whole, the strategy. We are in a lot of collaborations and partnerships with media outlets where we would get the do follow links. But yeah, usually it depends on the media outlets, and if they don't do the backlink, you cannot get it.
Yeah.
That's just how.
But you've totally nailed how PR and SEO work together, which I think can be simply put as I think three things. So keywords, relationships, and links, and those three things work hand in hand. Probably the relationship being the most important thing, but then it's about thinking about SEO with the keywords, and with the relationship, you get the mention or the link.
Yes, yeah. I also would like to add one very important thing that is so important on the practical side of things for PR and SEO, but that gets left out at the moment completely. So the departments, they're set up for marketing. So you have the digital marketing, you have PR, and you basically have the Google ads, you have the content, you have the Facebook and Instagram ads, LinkedIn advertising, you have PR, but what's totally forgotten about at the moment is the customer relationships. So whatever business you have, if there are just like average reviews of the clients, because you're just not really, not doing a great job, then there's nothing we as PR people or in SEO we can do. So the journalists would also look at this and would say, like, why should I feature a business where that doesn't make an effort to make their clients happy? And in SEO, it's the same. You can maybe have all those link building strategies and all those great placements, but when the reviews are just not good. So it's actually where I wish businesses would look more into, to first and foremost, really provide a great service or a great around the product after sales, like the service relationship, to gain better reviews, because there's nothing we can do if that's low.
And if you didn't need another reason to come up with a great review strategy, there it is. Reviews are so important, but yet another reason why you need good reviews. It makes perfect sense. Why would you, as a journo, want to publish something that's where a brand's got some bad reviews? Melanie, we're coming to the end here. It's been a great conversation. I love PR because it fits so well with search engine optimization. You've really made it easier to understand and why people should be doing it. Perhaps I'm innovative. Perhaps I'm a fast thinker of a large global enterprise, and I'm thinking Melanie's the person I need to speak to, or perhaps I'm an entrepreneur about to start a fashion brand. Melanie, what's the best place to find you? And just mention the two different brands that you have as well.
Yeah. So a good place to find me is on LinkedIn, where I'm quite active, at Melanie Marten. And so at the Coup.de, coup.de, you would find the PR agency. If you're an entrepreneur that's just starting out, I would highly recommend to check out pronthego.com for all our PR tips that we provide there and to get a deeper understanding. But you will also find a contact there to reach out.
Excellent. Thanks so much indeed. I'll put that in the show notes. I've just put the PR on the go. That's the pronthego.com, and it was the coup.de.
.de.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much indeed. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Melanie, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of that great information with us. And I look forward to seeing you all and speaking to you all soon. So take care. See you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Bye.